Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. It's such a pleasure to be here, and I'm so excited for the panel discussion with Josh and Judith later, who are both incredible people. I was asked to give you some principles for effective justice, so I thought I'd give them to you from the Bible because it's a fairly good place to start. I don't know how many of you know the story of the widow and the oil in 2 Kings. If not, you can go read it afterwards. But basically, it's this amazing story about a widow whose sons are about to be taken into slavery. And she goes to talk to Elisha and says, "Oh, I need help. I need help. My son's about to be taken into slavery." Now, a lot of us, if we were in Elisha's position, let's be honest, we said, "Oh, let me handle it. I can pay the cost for you." We all like to be a hero. But what Elisha said was completely different. Firstly, Elisha asks her, "What do you have in your house?" And the widow says, "Nothing. I'm a poor widow. I have nothing in my house." But he asks her again, and eventually that's when she says, "Oh, I have this tiny bit of oil." And there, you can see that as the third one down, local ownership and resources. That is, for me, utterly key to development, effective development. It needs to be local ownership, local resources. And then people aren't always waiting for the NGO to come back and do the next project. And also, that widow had the dignity of seeing God transform her life using what she already had. And we can see this elsewhere in the Bible as well. Think of the feeding of the 5,000, or when the disciples had to roll Lazarus' stone away. God loves to involve us in our own transformation, which is incredibly exciting. The other thing with the widow is he told us to go and collect jars from her community, or quite an embarrassing thing to do, meant them saying, "Why do you need however many jars it is?" And yet, I'm sure that what that did was actually root her in the structures, in the social structures that were already there, and getting everyone to play their part, which is number 4 there, whether that's local government, whether that's local churches, whether that's the private sector, that is vital to sustainable change. The other one, holistic. The widow's change wasn't just physical, yes, she saved her sons from slavery, she had more oil, but social. She was connected to her community. Spiritual. I mean, if I'd seen that miracle, I would certainly trust God a lot more afterwards. And then there's mental and emotional elements that we often forget, but it's actually one of the most key things in development. She saw that she had an active part to play, and she was dignified in the process. Long-term change. She sold the oil, and the Bible tells us that she lives off it for the rest of her life. Learning what works, I'm sure she did. She learned to trust on God, but that one's just absolutely vital. I can't tell you how many times we see people reinventing the wheel in development when the research is all there. There are so many good resources. We just need to find them. So I think for me, the absolute biggest difference that for effective development is that change in beliefs, the change in mindset from dependency, which we can see in that Bible passage with her using her own resources to change it. And the way that Eagles worked in this process called church and community mobilization, which is very similar to what Judith either has talked or will be talking about. That's our next door neighbour's cockerel. But yeah, it's called church and community mobilization process. What happens is Eagles will go and work with a local church and community so that they can actually identify the abundance of resources that God has already given them, and then will help them to prioritize, give them the tools rather to prioritize their own solutions, and then to solve those problems using their own resources. And that approach really is transformative. This is one community, this list of things on the screen. One community in deep poverty. Malawi is the 6th lowest GDP in the world, and this was a poor village. But just by the church and the communities using what they already have, people had enough food to feed their families. They were caring for the orphans, the widows. They built a bridge. They planted trees. They started 4 nursery schools. They built a primary school. They paid fees for all the orphans, adult literacy classes, ended discrimination. The list just goes on. And I think when I started working with Eagles was the first time I was like, wait, I actually think it is possible to end poverty, but not by us bringing in our expert solutions from England with no knowledge about the local context, but just by breaking dependency and equipping people to use what God has already given them. Just to end with, this is a nice picture. But just to end with, the thing I most often hear when people are talking about effective development is that thing about the fish, give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, feed him for a lifetime. But actually, I think that's the difference between bad development and good development, not between the bad development and the best development. Because would teaching man to fish actually feed him for a lifetime in our changing global context? Of course it wouldn't. Like, what if the river dried up? What if the local, sugar company decided to throw the community off the land that they were using to fish? What if there was overfishing and fish stocks depleted? Or what if the market was flooded and the value of fish went down? Or what if the man and his family just got bored of eating fish every day? Like, the only thing that brings effective long-term change is when people are equipped to use their own resources to solve their own problems, to use the God-given creativity that we all have, every single one of us. Thank you so much.